Thanks a lot for staying with us here on Sunrise Live on E on this Hope Day Wednesday. Now, home testing kits for HIV is now, or they are now available, as well as, and they are as easy as home pregnancy tests. So for as little as about between 14 really and 60 Rand, South Africans can now purchase an HIV testing kit from their local pharmacy, as well as screen themselves to find out whether they actually have the virus. So joining us this morning to deliberate further about the matter, as well as what does it mean for us, especially, we've got from the Department of Health, Dr. Thatho Chidarikire, who is the Director for HIV Prevention Strategies. Now, remember, it is a conversation that you can easily get involved in. Simply give us a call on 011 447 1742 or 2570. Alternatively, leave your comments on our Facebook as well as on our Twitter pages. Dr. Thatho, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you and good morning.
Now, when we're looking at the testing kits in itself, I mean, the statistics are showing that I think about 3.7, you'll correct me with the figures, but about 3.7 million people currently in the country are known to have the HIV virus. So when we're looking at such an innovation as a home testing kit in itself, what is it actually hoping to achieve?
Right. When it comes to the stats, actually the figure that you just talked to now is actually double. There's almost 7 million.
Now we're not, so it's no longer 3.7 million as indicated.
It's about 7
now
million
there's 7 million people that are currently that are living with HIV.
HIV in South Africa.
Okay.
Yes. So self-testing kits are actually viewed as expansion to testing. You would know that most of the HIV testing in the country is run on the backbone of the public health facilities. A lot of people test in public health facilities. And there are some people who would not go to public health facilities for different reasons. Maybe they don't have time. Maybe they would rather go somewhere else, private doctor, activations, or anywhere else. So self-testing kits are seen as those tests that would actually provide that opportunity for that individual who would rather do this test in the privacy of their own home instead of going to a public facility, as I say, or to a doctor for whatever reason that they may have.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at it as well. It's been said that, well, it's available over the counter in itself. So you've got 7 million people in the country that are currently living with HIV. The whole purpose of it, I'm sure, is to know our status. Is that correct?
Definitely.
Okay,
yes.
so once you've achieved and we're going to go, and you're going to take us through in terms of how the mechanics actually operate, but once a person knows, how do you guys then have figures of whether or not that individual is HIV positive or negative? Because the whole purpose of public health is so that you can record those statistics. If I'm doing it at home, I discard of this and then?
Definitely. Our policy, we've just published a new HIV testing services policy that is aligned to WHO recommendations. And again, there we have clearly articulated that HIV self-testing, which really is screening, is actually not diagnosis. It is a screening test where if an individual finds themselves HIV positive, they need to go and confirm the status at a nearby other health facility or their private doctor or at any other private sector that actually conducts HIV testing. So what happens is that with the testing algorithm in the country, you screen, and then if the screening test is positive, then it's confirmed. It is only with 2 positive tests that an HIV positive diagnosis can be given.
So it's, I beg your pardon, a screening, not necessarily a diagnosis, because we need to confirm it.
Exactly.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you about the psychological impact of such a screening in itself. Hypothetically speaking, an individual tests at home, they find out that their results are positive. Okay, my next question is, what would make you think that after that individual finds out that they are positive, psychologically, they are fit enough or in the right space of mind to say, okay, I've tested positive, now I'm going to go for my screening? What makes us think that that individual will not see that screen and say, I'm HIV positive, my life is over? Because now we're basing this whole entire thing on assumption, wouldn't you say?
Well, not necessarily. There are a lot of demonstration projects that are going on in the country to actually look at the acceptability and the user-friendliness, the usability of the home screening tests. And with the studies that we're having, there are different population groups that are actually quite receptive to these home tests. And these include, for example, our key population sector, our sex workers, our MSM, young people in universities. So there are already population groups that are quite receptive to using this test. And as I said, it is due to different reasons that would bar an individual from going to a public health facility.
Yeah.
We are now living in an era where the government public health facilities are testing over 10 million people per annum. So we have created that environment where people do go for testing, an enabling environment where people go for testing because they need to know their status, because they know the benefits of knowing your status early. Particularly now that when you test, everybody who tests HIV positive can go on treatment, without having to wait for your CD4 count, as we may be aware of.
Yeah.
And we've been very clear about the fact that when one screens themselves at home and they do screen positive, they need to confirm. Even when you go to a public facility, you screen with a counselor. If it's positive, you still need to confirm it. So it's very crucial that the populations or individuals who actually test or who go for this screening test are people who are actually ready to do that particular test.
Yeah.
And at the same time, while the recommendation and the guideline would be that each test should have a very clear information leaflet to give people information. Obviously, it's not counseling per se because it's information that you read, and it will be in different languages. It will be pictorial as well, so that people understand.
I'm going to ask you, I want us to further expand on this issue around pre-counseling as well, because it's a matter that's been raised. But of course, as we said, that we are taking your calls this morning. We've got Thatho who's calling in from KZN this morning. Good morning to you. Okay, we seem to have lost our caller there as well, but keep those conversation coming, as well as from the lines. We're going to take in some of your Facebook comments. I'm going to invite my co-host Mark Haskins to join me. Mark, I know that there are various comments that are coming in from Facebook this morning. What are people saying?
Yes, indeed. Well, obviously the question we asked, what questions would you like to ask about the HIV home testing kit? And the first one is Eddie. He says, let's say I test and the results say I'm positive. Should I then go to a public clinic where my file will be treated like a magazine? He says, I don't see the point of home testing. HIV is not like pregnancy. So is it obviously after, if you've taken the test, you obviously need to go to a clinic. And I think the concern a lot of people have, you still have to end up going to the clinic.
So in other words, what's the point?
Well, the point is, as I was saying, this is not a blanket test kit. There are a lot of people, as I said, we test about 10 million people per annum in public health facilities. There are people that test in private sector. So people test for HIV for different reasons. And these screening home kits are not going to be distributed to everybody. They're going to be distributed per demand.
Okay.
That is why we're having demonstration studies to ensure that we look at different populations. If you want to look at impact, you need to focus, you need to target. You can't just put a blanket on a new intervention because otherwise you won't see the impact and you won't be able to monitor what you're trying to achieve.
Well, a question from Sipo is saying, are the results 100% true and how many times can it be used?
A test can only be used once. And in terms of accuracy, we follow WHO recommendations where these test kits are supposed to be 98% specific and 99% sensitive. So between 98, 99 and 100. So you know that in terms of testing, even with a pregnancy test, you don't get 100%. Yeah. But what we do is that the specificity and the sensitivity, as recommended by WHO, should be at least at 98 and 99%.
Okay, then one last question. Bumpita saying, aren't they afraid it might happen that some commit suicide after a positive result?
And obviously we've spoken about this in terms of the psychological impact.
Exactly. So we're going to have different outlets when we produce the guidelines. We're working together with the SA Clinician Society, the NICD, WHO, to put together guidelines in terms of what to do when one goes into this mode of testing themselves or screening themselves at home. And we'll be giving information in terms of who to reach out to when one feels like they need this pre-test counseling before they can test themselves at home. So it's going to be very clear to say that if you're not sure of what you are doing, if you're not sure how you will manage the results, go for testing first, get ready. And then once you're ready, then you can test. And if you do screen positive, you need to have it confirmed. Because remember that if one tests at home and they test positive and they don't go for treatment, then it defeats the purpose. However, if one tests and they test positive and they go for treatment, that's what government is about.
Well,
Sure.
those are just some of the questions on Facebook. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks there, Mark. And of course, I mean, looking at the prevalence of HIV as well, especially when it comes to testing in itself, it's been said, especially statistics in South Africa, that women are the ones that get themselves tested as opposed to men. Men are still a little bit more reluctant to get their status. Are you hoping that by introducing such test kits that you're able to break that stereotype that currently exists?
That's exactly what we're hoping for. And I'll keep referring us back to the studies that we're doing. Women go to public health facilities when they're not well, when the children are not well. It's just in the nature of women, as documented, that they would go to a clinic to make sure that their health is taken care of. Secondly, women test when they're pregnant. We know about the Prevention of Mother-to-Child Transmission program in public health facilities, and that every pregnant woman would be offered an HIV test through provider-initiated counseling and testing to ensure that they know their status and they are able to protect the child in terms of transmission, either during pregnancy or birth or even during breastfeeding. So that is how we're able to capture so many women in the country, even worldwide, really.
And of course, before we wrap up our conversation, how do we work it? Because we brought you here with the test in itself, so we just need a quick demonstration. And I mean, obviously, we're not going to conduct the test live on air, but just take us through the mechanics of it, because what do we have here?
Right. We have home screening tests in front of me here, and these are blood home screening tests. We also have oral fluid tests. Unfortunately, I don't have the oral fluid test. The difference here is that this kind of test, if I were to take this device, for example, you still need to get blood. This is a lancet, a retractable lancet that you open and you prick the same way that we do at a public health facility.
So how do you prick it though?
When you press this onto the finger,
the needle will come out.
The needle comes out.
So you have to press it into your finger, the needle comes out, automatically blood goes in there.
Back.
Okay, and then?
And the retraction is so that we don't get anybody pricked again. This is a safety mechanism so that it retracts back. Once we get the blood, then the blood will be pulled by capillary action by this device. Put it there, then you fill the tip with the blood. And as the blood goes through, because again, once we fill the tip with the blood,
so obviously
this is the buffer on this side. It's a buffer. This is pulled out because it's got what we call the diluent or the buffer, which helps the chemical reaction on this side. And then this is put into the buffer to mix the blood with the buffer, then it runs through. The incubation period with test kits is between 10 and 15 minutes. So once that has passed, as with the pregnancy test, as with the rapid test in public health facility, you will see 2 red lines if it's positive on the screen here. If it's negative, there will be 1 red line.
1 red line for negative, 2 red lines for positive.
Yes.
Got you.
So this one, on the other hand, this one is similar. As you can see, it works in a similar way to that one. And this one, the whole system is built in. And the lancet is here. You pull it out. Again,
prick it.
When you pull it out, you pull this. And then the lancet will come out of there.
Got you.
Again, you press it onto the finger. The lancet comes out and it retracts. Then here, you pull the blood in using this little device. On this side is a capillary tube, which will take the blood through into the device, and the lines will show here.
1 for negative, 2 for positive.
All
right, everybody. Of course, we've seen just how the mechanics work. Their innovation at its best, really, to curb the scourge of HIV, but perhaps also reduce the stigma around it. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us this morning. They're speaking to Dr. Thatho Chidarikire, who's the Director for HIV Prevention as well as Strategies, for joining us this morning, shedding some light on issues. But now it's 7 o'clock, just after 7. Mark Chase is standing by to give us the latest in the news. Stay tuned.